The great thing is that students can apply for college or university at the same time as applying for apprenticeships. And this is what we recommend, okay? Have too many options for them rather than too few. Okay, so if we go into the next slide. So I'm just going to go through the basics of apprenticeships at the start, okay? So you can do an apprenticeship from the age of 16 upwards. There's no upper age limit. So parents, you can go into an apprenticeship if you want to as well. Apprenticeships can last anything from 1 year to 6 years, okay? And they're divided into two main components. So 80% of the time, they would be working, and 20% of the time your child would be learning. So let's talk about that working element first. So 80% of the time they're working, and they're doing this with an employer. Okay, so also feel free to ask questions throughout. I don't know if I mentioned that before, and we will get to questions at the end. Okay, so 80% of the time they're working, and they're doing this with an employer. It's important to remember that this is a real job. So they'll have a contract of employment. It's a real job, real responsibilities. You know, it's not just work experience. They won't just be making the tea or the coffee. They'll be managing products. They might have projects. They might have teams that they're in charge of. Okay. They can get fired from an apprenticeship, but they could also get promoted or have a salary increase. So speaking of salary, they will be earning throughout their apprenticeship. So the minimum wage for a first-year apprentice is £4.15 an hour. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but do stay with me. If they were doing any other form of higher education, they would not be getting paid for their time. Then on top of this, this is the minimum wage for their first year only. Every year they're an apprentice, this minimum goes up. And lastly, the majority of companies do pay more than this anyway, so it's not necessarily something they need to worry about. So 80% of the time they're doing their job, they're working. 20% of the time they're studying, and they're studying towards earning a qualification, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later on. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So we've covered salary a bit, but let's talk about employability. 90%, that's 90% of apprentices get hired by their employer after they finish their apprenticeship. So why is that? Well, the employer spent a lot of time on them. They've spent a lot of money on them. They've trained them up. They don't want to lose them to another company. So 90% do stay on with their employer. That's an almost guaranteed job. But that 10% who do decide to go on to other opportunities, they have that work experience. They have that qualification in order to do so. Social life. Your child will still have a social life doing an apprenticeship. They'll get to meet people both in their working environment and their learning environment. On top of that, like with any job, an apprenticeship first and foremost is a job. They will get holiday allowance, and they will get days off during the week. They can gain a degree doing an apprenticeship, and we will be covering this in greater detail later on. For their qualification, earning their qualification, they will not have to pay anything for their education. So they're earning that salary, they're putting money in their pocket, but they don't have to pay anything out. Apprenticeship opportunities are also available all across the country, so they don't just have to stay where they are at the moment. But it is important for you to emphasize the fact they need to be realistic in where they're able to move. So, they have to make sure that they can relocate to where that apprenticeship is, or that they're able to commute there. With an apprenticeship, you have to make sure you're able to reach both your training provider, where you're spending 20% of your time, and your working environment, where you're spending 80% of the time. So again, encourage them to be realistic. Now, I do have to say that a lot of people think that apprenticeships are the easy option. If they don't get to university, they can just always do an apprenticeship. That's not the case. Apprenticeships are not the fallback option. They are competitive, like any job. You'll have one position and multiple applicants. They'll have to do job interviews, they'll have to do assessments. And then if they do secure the job, if they do secure the apprenticeship, they will have to learn how to balance that working life and that learning life. So apprenticeships, they aren't for everyone, but they are still a fantastic opportunity. So you need to do your research. They need to figure out whether that is the route for them. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So even just a decade back, if we look a decade back, apprenticeships would have been things like electrician, plumber, trade industries. All of those are still available, but now there are over 750 different options in apprenticeships. So they can become a solicitor, a nurse, a teacher, an architect, all through apprenticeships. Okay? It is really vital that you encourage your children, if they're fixated on a particular job, to find out whether they can take that route doing an apprenticeship. Okay? So encourage them to look into whether they have to go to university or they can do an apprenticeship. They also bring out new apprenticeships every single year. So last year, for example, they brought out one in policing. This year, they brought out one in film storyboarding and personal training. And next year, they're bringing out one in space engineering. So that's someone who helps design the satellites and the space shuttles that get launched. So amazing opportunities. It is also worth noting that during the pandemic, obviously some industries have excelled and others have dipped a little bit. So things like apprenticeships like in construction, technology, healthcare, those are things that are still widely available. Other things such as the arts, there has been a dip, but we do expect this to come back. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So who are offering these apprenticeships? 50% of the time, it's going to be big household name companies like the ones you see on the screen. The other 50% of the time, it's going to be local, smaller companies. And I want you to emphasize to your kids that one isn't better than the other, okay? They're still getting that work experience. They're still getting that qualification. It just sort of depends on where they feel like they fit. Do they fit better in a big, bustling city, or do they want to stay close to home? If I want you to remember one thing from this presentation is that applying for apprenticeships is not like applying for university. So when your kids apply to university, they have that one-stop shop. They go on UCAS, they put all 5 of their options, they have one deadline. That's not the case with apprenticeships, okay? So apprenticeships, the employers decide when they want apprentices. So they are offered all different times of the year. Each apprenticeship is unique. So for example, the Telegraph is only open for 4 weeks of the entire year, their vacancies. Coca-Cola, if your child wants to work for Coca-Cola, they would need to apply a year in advance. Whereas places like the NHS, the Army, they employ apprentices all year round. It's a rolling application. So if they're excited by a particular company, it is important to encourage them to do their research to find out when to apply. Also, different companies are going to have different benefits. So for example, Bentley, they offered their apprentices 30 days holiday a year. Coca-Cola offer apprentices free Olympic tickets and free football tickets. Also things like working from home schemes or pets at work schemes, things like that, encourage them to do their research. Okay, next slide, please. So say that your child wanted to become a solicitor. They may say to themselves, I'm not going to bother looking at Starbucks. I don't want to become a barista. As you know, every single company will have so many different departments within them, and each department has the potential to offer a different apprenticeship. So they could do an apprenticeship in HR, in IT, in marketing, in legal. So, yes, they could become a solicitor for Starbucks. So, it's important to encourage them to look past what they think the company represents. You know, they might find opportunities in the most unusual of places. Okay, if we can go on the next slide. So, 20% of the time, as I stated before, they are studying towards earning a qualification. And these qualifications come in the form of levels. So, each of these levels equates to a different qualification. So, a level 2 apprenticeship equals 5 GCSEs. A level 3 apprenticeship, 2 A levels. Level 4 and above, you start going into higher and degree level apprenticeships. Level 4 equals a higher national diploma. Level 5 equals a foundation degree at university. Level 6 equals an undergraduate degree. And level 7 equals a master's degree. Now, it's important to understand that these are recognized qualifications. So, a level 3 apprenticeship, for example, has the same number of UCAS points as 2 A levels. So these are really recognized qualifications. If you were to say to me, though, what does my child need to get into a level 3 apprenticeship, for example? The answer becomes a little bit more complicated. So, as I said before, every apprenticeship is unique. So, the employer will set the requirements. So, they'll say what grades they need, what subjects, what work experience. But I can give you a generic sort of idea. A level 2, your child might not necessarily need any qualifications at all. In fact, they can get a maths and English, they can get their functional skills in maths and English doing that apprenticeship if they do not already have them. Level 3, you're probably looking at needing GCSEs, and level 4 and above, you're probably looking at needing A levels. But again, that is a very general idea. If you did a level 2 apprenticeship, for example, you could then go on to a level 3, level 4, etc. And that might be something that they're offered at the end of their apprenticeship, maybe as or instead of a job. Okay? It is important not to get too fixated on the levels. Okay? They may have to start at a lower level, but they're still able to progress through. Work experience is something that's also really relevant. So, because it's a job, you know, work experience, enthusiasm is something that is important. So, say that they wanted to become a chef, but they didn't have any catering qualifications, but they had worked in a restaurant every summer for the past 3 years. That work experience may get them to a level, starting at a level 3 instead of a level 2. Okay, so again, do your research, encourage your kids to look into each individual apprenticeship. So I'm going to hand over to Fred now, who's going to tell you a bit more about the qualification side.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Abby. The 80% we covered, which is sort of mainly to do with work, but now let's focus a little bit on the 20%. So as Abby already mentioned, 20% of the apprenticeship you will spend, the students will spend studying, okay? So that's the education side of the apprenticeship. Now, this bit you don't get to pick, okay? So it comes kind of as a package deal. When you apply for an apprenticeship, you are applying to the employer directly, and they will then have connections with the relevant training provider. So you don't get to pick this bit. But there are lots of different delivery models. So when you are searching those apprenticeships, it's definitely worth making sure that you know who your training provider is and the kind of delivery model that comes along with that. So one of them could be workplace learning, which means that a training provider will send a tutor into the workplace. So once a week, the apprentice will sit at work with their tutor and they will do their work at work, their education side at work. Classroom learning is when big sort of employers take on a big cohort of apprentices. So once a week, again, they will send them all in in a study, in an area where they study, and they will have a tutor, a teacher that comes in and teaches them their apprenticeship. So they'll meet with other apprentices. So people like Mercedes, for example, take on a big cohort of apprentices. So instead of having one-to-ones, they get them all together in one room, and they have a building where they study once a week. Then, of course, there's the attend college or training provider. So once a week, students will have to make their way to college or their training provider. Please do bear in mind that the 20% is just as important as the 80%. If the students don't turn up to college or university, they may end up being at risk of losing their apprenticeship and being fired. Okay, so it's very important that they attend that day. And of course, at the moment, there's online learning, so it's a lot more online based. Again, they will still get lots of support from their tutor. Tutors are available all the time for those apprentices, and once a week, again, they will sit with them and they will do online classes as they're doing currently. Just so you know, with higher end degree apprenticeship, which I'll touch up in a second, some universities, the ones that are located a little bit far away from those employers, students may be asked to do a 6 weeks block period where they spend 6 weeks at university, and then the rest of the years it's all online and portfolio work. Okay, so it does depend on the type of apprenticeship and the kind of role. So it does differ a lot. So definitely worth looking at that, and we will show you where to find that information in a little while. Okay, sorry, if we move on to the next slide, please. So higher end degree apprenticeships are really great. They're becoming really, really popular, and a lot more universities are now providing higher end degree apprenticeships. So it's amazing. It works just like any other level of apprenticeship. So apprentices work full-time and study part-time. They will still get some amazing benefits. So they will still be working and getting lots of work experience, as well as studying towards that degree and masters. On top of that, they may still get some great benefits of being a student. So they may still get a NUS card and some other discounts, and they will get lots of learning and support as well. Now, it can take between 4 to 6 years to complete, so it's a little bit longer than a full-time sort of course at university. However, don't forget, you are building lots of work experience in that particular role, so it makes you much more employable at the end. And the other great benefits from doing a higher end degree apprenticeship is that all the tuition fees are funded by the government and the employer. So students will come out with a degree in their pocket and no debts. Now, because of that, students are not expected, the ones that go down the higher end degree apprenticeship route, they're not expected to apply for a student finance loan or a maintenance loan, okay? So they can't do that, I'm afraid. So it's really important that if they do choose to go a little bit further away from home, relocate or commute, remember that they will have to live with the salary that they're earning, okay? So whatever they're earning from their salary, they will have to work out all the expenditures. So it's really important to balance that as well, because they won't get any additional support. So make sure to bear that in mind. And the other thing that I would strongly recommend everybody, especially those students who are not sure exactly what they'll like to do and they like to keep both options open, is that they can still apply for those university on their UCAS application. So they still put down their full-time courses on the UCAS and all the universities they're interested in, as well as applying for higher end degree apprenticeship. As we've already said, you're applying those directly to the employer, so they don't need to go onto the UCAS application. Therefore, you can apply for as many as you want, and it won't affect the UCAS application. So once you have those A-level results, you can really pick and choose from the opportunities that come up. So definitely worth keeping those options open and having a look and exploring what's the best for your students. As I said, it's a more practical way, but there are some great careers that you can do through higher end degree apprenticeships. Abby's already mentioned a few, such as teaching, nursing, quantity surveyor, law. There's lots of great subjects and more are coming out as well. So definitely worth looking into that. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So just a few other tips. As we've already said, there isn't one deadline. So things can start as early as September. So those post 16 and post 18 students who would like to go down the apprenticeship route, it's really important that they start as early as possible to look and research and potentially apply. As we've already mentioned, some employers start as early as September, so definitely worth exploring all those options and apply as soon as you can. That way you got more opportunity. Then apprenticeships are advertised in all different places. So tonight we will show you the Find an Apprenticeship website, which is a great starting point. But of course, we advise sort of students and parents to make sure you sign up to lots of different websites. Make sure that you manage your alerts, sign up for those alerts, because some employers advertise on their own websites. But there's lots of other websites, as we've already said. There's the UCAS website as well. Not Going to Uni, the AIM group. We're going to show you a few, but there's lots of great websites that you can go to find those apprenticeships. So definitely worth looking at all of them and sign up for as many as you can. Also, as we've already explained, the entry requirements does vary. So every employer will set that up and they will ask for different qualifications and work experience. As we've already gone through the levels, majority of them will prefer you to have maths and English GCSE equivalent at grade 4. That's sort of the minimum, but of course you can work those along as well if those students haven't quite achieved those. But it does vary. So some employers may potentially ask for some A levels depending. So again, something you need to look out for. And the application process does vary. So again, employers have all different recruitment times and recruitment processes. So some of them may be quite long. They start from September and it takes you all the way to the summer. Others may have a very short process. So it may just be an interview straight after the application. So it does depend on the employer. So it's best to research, and you can find that information directly on the employer's website under the careers page. Often they will have that information. So make sure to do plenty of research. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So these are some of the examples that we picked out just to show you what is available around sort of the UK. These are very sort of around everywhere. And you can see we've got a couple of level 2s, level 3s and degree ones. As you can see, the salary does change. Usually that tends to go up as the level of apprenticeship goes up, but that's not always necessarily true. It depends on the kind of role that the students are doing as well. So that does vary. Also, what you need to bear in mind is the closing date. So if there's something that students find or you find for your kids and you would like them to apply, make sure you look at the closing date because you want to give yourself plenty of time to apply. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to show you all the relevant information that you look out for when looking at an apprenticeship post. So if we click on dental nurse, please, level 3. Abby, if you could take us through this bit and just tell us all the best bit to look out for when looking at these apprenticeship posts.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. So I can see that there are a couple of questions coming in. Do feel free to ask any questions and we will answer them at the end. So here we have the Find an Apprenticeship website. So this is where about, I would say, 90% of all the apprenticeship opportunities are listed. So Fred is going to go through some of the other ways you can find apprenticeships, but it is important, it is vital, in fact, that you get your kids to sign up to this website. So it is important that they register for this website because this is where the most amount of opportunities are going to be found. So as you can see, this is an example of an apprenticeship vacancy. So if we go down, you can see that there's going to be a summary, the sort of things that they can expect to do, day-to-day activities. It's going to tell them the weekly wage. So this one is £240 a week. Again, this is very variable. Very variable. Then it's going to tell you how many hours a week they can expect to work and what days a week. So sometimes they might be working weekends, etc. It will tell you how long that apprenticeship will last. So again, an apprenticeship can last from 1 year to 6 years. Now, this is important. It will tell you the start date of the apprenticeship. So obviously they will need to apply to apprenticeships that they know they'll be able to start. So anything that starts when they're still at school, obviously they should not apply. If they do, they need to make it clear to the employer that they will not be able to begin at that date. It will then tell you the apprenticeship level. So this one is a level 3. So as we said, equivalent to A levels. And it will tell you how many positions are available. So again, apprenticeships first and foremost are a job. And with anything that comes with a job, there'll be multiple applicants to one position. Okay, if we go down a bit. So this is where it tells you what they are asking for in that apprenticeship. So it's going to tell you the skills and the qualities that they're looking for in an apprentice. And this is probably the bit that you guys are most interested in. It's going to tell you the qualifications they're looking for. So again, each apprenticeship, each employer is going to ask for different levels, going to ask for different subjects. So as you can see, this one is asking for GCSEs, A star to C, or 4 to 9. Then it will tell you future prospects. So again, this can tell you whether they can expect a job with them at the end of that apprenticeship, or if they can expect to do a higher level apprenticeship afterwards. Then it will tell you little things, so things to consider. So this might be things like they'll be working outside, they'll be doing weekend work. As you can see, for this role, they need to be immunized against hepatitis B and to pass a DBS check. So just little things like that. Then if you go down a bit more, it will give you information about the employer. So where they are, just a little bit about them. Again, this is where your child will be spending 80% of the time. And then if you go down further, it will tell you about the training provider. So this is who they'll be spending 20% of their time with. So it is important to know as well that all training providers will have an Ofsted rating. So you are able to find out more about them through that. So say you did want, your child did want to apply for this apprenticeship, what they would do is go to the very top of the site, and there is a button. So they would need to sign in to apply and apply via the website. So that is just a little bit about the Find Apprenticeship website, which is going to be the first port of call and you're looking for an apprenticeship. So I'm going to hand back over to Fred now, who's going to give us a bit more information.
Thank you so much, Abby. So if we go on to the next slide, thank you so much. So how can you tell if it's a good apprenticeship? So we kind of showed you a little bit what an apprenticeship post looks like and some of the main sort of things that you want to look out for before you apply. So of course, salary is going to be quite important because as I've already mentioned, some students, who are thinking of relocating, moving away from home, they're going to need to support themselves and they will have to rely on that money. So of course, so that financial aspect is very important. But don't worry, they can't get paid any less than the minimum wage. So the minimum wage is sort of £4.15. They can't get any less. And as Abby's already mentioned, majority of employers tend to pay a little bit more than that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if, of course, a student, an apprentice works really hard in their role and shows enthusiasm and hard work, the employers don't have to wait to the end of the year to give them a pay rise. They can receive a pay rise at any time. So if it's just like a real job. If they work hard, of course, they can get lots of great benefits from those employers, and employers don't have to wait to the end of the year to raise the salary. Okay, so definitely worth bearing that in mind. The other really important aspect to look at is what's the progression. Progression is really important. What's going to happen at the end of the apprenticeship? Is there going to be a progression after that? Are they going to go on to a higher apprenticeship? Are they going to get a permanent role? So definitely worth looking at that information and finding out is really important as well to tell whether it's a good apprenticeship. Then whether they're going to get a fixed sort of permanent role at the end of the apprenticeship, what are they going to do afterwards? Again, it's really important. Whether the role that they're doing is varied as well. It's very important to keep apprentices motivated. So they need to be doing different things all the time, learning new things all the time. So again, it's quite important that the role keeps them enthusiastic. and learning lots of new things. And lastly, again, it's really important that they look at that training provider. And as Abby's already mentioned, they all have Ofsted ratings, so you can have a look at that as well. Again, some students might be more comfortable going to a big college, others may find it easier to have a one-to-one. So it's really important that you look at that information before you apply, because students will have to, you know, there's apprentices will have to be comfortable. As I've already mentioned, if they do drop out at any time, they will end up with no qualification. So it's really important that they stick with the apprenticeship all the way to the end so they can gain some amazing qualifications. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. So just to give you a few more tips. So again, it's like a real job, and we can't stress this enough, okay? So when you apply for apprenticeship, it's like applying for a real job. So it's important to bear in mind that the jobs are live, so they can come up and they can come down at any time. So the one that we showed you, the Find an Apprenticeship website, which is the government, a lot of employers advertise on there. Of course, not everybody, but it's a really good place to start. And those get updated all the time, so new things come out all the time, so definitely worth keeping an eye. And as Abby's already mentioned, you can register and you can set up alerts. So if you can't find anything today, something may come up tomorrow. Also, there's lots of other jobs on other sites, so apprenticeships are everywhere, not just on the government website. As I've already mentioned, it's really important to go and research those employers, especially the ones that you're particularly interested in, and find out what opportunities they have. If you can't find anything on their careers page, then what potentially you could do is contact them directly. Employers really like it when students, not parents, when students get in touch with those employers and let them know they're interested in finding an apprenticeship through them. And you can ask them when they provide apprenticeship, when the recruitment starts, and what type of apprenticeships they provide. As we've already mentioned, there's lots of different opportunities. As I've already said, lots of new things get added all year round, so new things come out all the time. There are deadlines. There's not one specific deadline. There is a closing date for every apprenticeship post, so make sure you look at that. And apply for lots of different things, okay? So apply for as many apprenticeships as you can. Keep your options open, because the more you apply, the more likely you are to be successful. As we've already mentioned, the COVID, especially since COVID, things have become very competitive. However, a lot of employers are providing apprenticeships. They are still out there providing apprenticeships, so do apply for many. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, please. So the information that was showed to you today was found on the Find an Apprenticeship website. So it's the government website. So if you type into Google Find an Apprenticeship, and it's the gov.uk, and you can register and you can search as well. It will give you all the information about those employers and training providers. So make sure that you set up alerts if you can't find anything today, because something may come up tomorrow. And again, if there is a particular employer that you like your son or daughter to do an apprenticeship, and then get in touch with those companies directly, find out what opportunities they provide. Some of them are providing some amazing opportunities, so definitely worth applying for many and getting in touch with those companies. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. So where else to look? Company website. As I said, there's a career page often dedicated to careers, but also apprenticeships. But again, if you can't find anything on there, you can get in touch by sending them a quick email. That actually proved to be very successful, so worth a try. Also, follow them on social media. Social media is great, especially at the moment, because a lot of employers are posting opportunities on their social media. So what you could do is start following them. If you have a LinkedIn, you can follow those employers so you can see when new opportunities come up, because they often advertise it on there. And also speak to people. You never know, you probably know loads of different people that work in lots of different places, so they may know somebody that is looking for an apprentice. So speak and talk to loads of other people as well. And there's also the vacancy snapshot. This one is available on Amazing Apprenticeships website, and it has some of the big employers which you can flick through, so you can look at those employers, and if you click on them, it actually gives you a bit more information about their recruitment process, so you can find out the best tips when you're applying for these big employers. As we've already mentioned, they're all different, they all have a different recruitment process, so it's definitely worth doing a bit of research before you apply. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll give you that link. Okay, so here we are. So if you go on to amazingapprenticeships.com, vacancy snapshot is the one I showed you earlier, but also what you could do is get your monthly pack. So for you parents, there are some amazing resources available for you to help you helping students finding apprenticeships. So we have dedicated a monthly pack for parents, which you can download every month, and a new topic comes out every month. So we're doing different themes. Of course, this month is National Apprenticeship Week. So this week is a special sort of week, and but every month is different. So there's lots of different tips for example, if you're looking for engineering or law, we dedicate a month to each individual area. It also comes in 7 different languages, so you can also download it in a different language if you like to. So definitely worth downloading. That gives you lots of great tips and information. So thank you so much from me. I would like you to pass on to Hamish, our apprentice, who is going to tell you now a little bit more about his experience of being an apprentice. So thank you, Hamish, all yours.
Thank you, Fred. So hi, everybody. My name is Hamish. I'm the Digital Marketing Apprentice here at the AIM Group. I'm just going to walk you through kind of what my role's like, how it's changed a little bit, and what your students or children could expect if they were to take an apprenticeship. So to give you a bit of a breakdown, I started my apprenticeship in September in 2020. Obviously, things are a little bit different now. In September, the pandemic looked like it was going down and things were opening back up. But obviously, since then, things got a lot worse. And so a lot of businesses and apprenticeships have changed with that. So a breakdown of some of my main duties with this apprenticeship. So I can expect to do things such as supporting my marketing manager. So this is doing things like writing up emails, calling stakeholders, or just monitoring our social media channels. I also do a lot of blog writing, so that goes up on our website and our Facebook and LinkedIn. And again, I manage our social media channels, so Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and even sometimes YouTube. I'll always have an overview on that and maybe create content or just speak to some of our followers and try and increase our following. So just kind of a little bit of a breakdown as to why I took this apprenticeship. One, I enjoy the benefits of being a student. You'll see further along that I've had a bit of a strange route into an apprenticeship, and education has always been something that's very important to me. And so it was really, really important that I carried that on. And a little bit of a breakdown is that I have online tutoring work there every week to do so. So what was my route into an apprenticeship? So like I said, it was a little bit different compared to other people's. So after my GCSEs, I actually stayed on at school and I completed my A-levels. I did this in media, geography and sociology. It was quite a variety of different topics because at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. All I'd really been told is through my friends and kind of even family was that if I wanted to kind of have a nice career and get anywhere, I had to get my A-levels and I had to go to university. So that's what I ended up doing. So after my A-levels, I completed my undergraduate degree in film business and media at a place called UCFB Wembley. But after that, I still kind of didn't really know what avenue I wanted to get into. So I spent the following year kind of getting work experience and taking internships. I was lucky enough to do some work experience at the BBC studios. And that was for a couple of weeks. And then I did a bit of freelance work. And I also was lucky enough to have an internship at Snack Media doing football blog writing. But one of the things I was noticing is that as the environment was getting a bit more competitive, it was hard for me to get a long-term place somewhere. It was all very short-term and I wasn't really being offered anything full-time. So I had to decide what I wanted to do because I couldn't just keep doing work experience placements throughout the whole year, especially as the pandemic started to get worse and obviously the job market became much more volatile. So why did I take an apprenticeship? Well, after that year kind of took place, I was finding myself struggling to find work. And on a lot of job sites such as Indeed, Reed, I was finding more and more businesses were actually offering apprenticeships. And I thought that if I was going to widen the range of jobs I was looking at, I really had to look into what apprenticeships were. So I did a bit of research on them. And it really seemed like something that I would like. I thought it was a really great opportunity to not only continue my education, which I'm really, really passionate about, but also earn a wage, which to me was really, really important. So I was about 21, 22. So I was at the point where I really, really did need to start earning a wage, earning my own money, just to start growing up, really. It was also really important for me to get my foot in the door. Obviously, from my work experience, my internships, I kind of found myself at the footsteps, but I never really got through. So I think an apprenticeship is a really, really good opportunity to get your foot in a place and also work your way up and develop alongside that business, which I like to think that's what I'm doing right now. And again, I know I keep saying it, but I really enjoy the benefits of being a student. Obviously, going to university, I really loved that. And even things such as having an NUS card, I find it really beneficial that I can still do that, especially in this economic climate. I really like eating out. I really like kind of buying clothes, going to the cinema. So to get 10, 15% off those kind of stuff, to me, it might sound silly, but I just really like it. And perhaps one of my favorite things is I can use everything I learned in a practical environment. So I might have a tutor session in the morning and we go through things like Facebook ads or Google Analytics, and I'll be able to use that same thing on my same working day. So I can put it into practice and help support my business and my own development, which I think is really, really good if you want to know kind of where you're at in your role and how you can get better. So what was the recruitment process like? Well, for me, it was relatively simple. So like I said, I was going through job sites such as Indeed and Reed, and I found the listing on Indeed and I applied online. After that, about a week took past, and then I had a formal phone call interview, and this was really, really formal. So they basically walked me through the role. They wanted to get to know me, who I was, what I was like, and kind of what my experience was and why I was applying for the role, really. And they also helped prepare me for my actual interview. So then I had my Zoom interview, and to me it was a little bit daunting because I've been used to having face-to-face interviews this whole time, and throughout university, whenever we did practice like that, it was always something they prepared us for was to meet someone in an office, and kind of you'd only be like a meter away. But obviously, Zoom's a little bit different, but it was very, very similar to a face-to-face interview. So it was the same questions, kind of talking about why did I want to take the job, what did I know about the company, what did I want to do in the future. All that really changed was I was looking at a webcam and someone on the other side of the screen. And then after I was offered the job, I had to take an online maths and English assessment. This doesn't actually sound as scary as it sounds. This was basically so that my kind of tutor and learning provider could assess where I was and whether I needed any extra help and support throughout my apprenticeship. So as I said, I started my apprenticeship in September, and it's fair to say a fair few things have changed since then. So one of the main things is I do all my training with LMP Education. They're my training provider, and that is all online based. So that will mean that I'll have tutor sessions one-on-one over Zoom or Microsoft Teams. I'll also have my lectures online with other apprentices, and all my work set will be over emails or online platforms. It is worth noting that with these tutor sessions and lectures, it is still very similar to going into college. So one of the things I really enjoy is the fact that I have a whole host of different apprentices that are also doing the same role as me, and it's a wide variety. So I could be in a lecture, and there'd be me, who's about 4 or 5 months into their apprenticeship. There'd be another person that's maybe just started, and there'd be another person that's just at the end. And I think that support is really, really handy because it means that if I'm stuck or if they're stuck, we can all help each other out. Exams are something that kind of we all have to look to, and knowing that there are other people that have gone through that kind of, to me, where I can kind of get a bit daunted by stuff like that, it's good to have something to fall back on and ask for support. So that's another form of support would be my tutor support. So I receive that every week, and we have regular catch-ups, and this is just as regular, if not more regular, than if it would be in person. So my tutor is always available online, on emails, or even on Zoom calls, just to go through the work I'm doing for my apprenticeship, but also the work I'm doing in my role. And we have regular catch-ups to make sure that I'm continuing my development in the right way, and they give me all the help and advice I need to make sure that I get the best out of myself. So like I said, I have a dedicated day in the week to do my online training sessions. Now, this is usually on a Wednesday or a Friday, and this is usually a 7-hour placement where we'll be given work in the morning through the form of maybe a lecture or, like I said, a one-on-one tutor session. and then we'd be given that day to complete it. So a lot of that might be they give us questions that we have to complete in the form of an essay and then email back over. Or it could be things like Google Digital Garage, which has become a lot more popular, where they set us courses and we have to complete them within a certain amount of time. It's also worth noting that I can also do my own work. So I've been lucky enough to kind of work in different areas of the business while I've been here. So we've been doing things like working on customer relationship management systems and things like that. And that can all go towards my end grade, which I thought was really, really handy and really, really helpful. And like I said before, we have an online classroom with other apprentices during the lessons. So it's not quite as scary as joining a one-on-one session and just listening to your tutor all the time. It's nice to have that atmosphere of other students who are in the same boat as you. So thank you for listening to me about my apprenticeship. I'm now going to pass you back over to Abby, who will talk you a little bit more through about how apprenticeships might change in the future.
So thanks, Hamish. So obviously, yes, I'm going to touch on a little bit what Hamish was talking about, the fact that, like with the rest of the world, apprenticeships are changing at the moment as well. So a few of the ways apprenticeships could or have changed is the fact that training providers could continue with online learning. So obviously Hamish at the moment is obviously using Zoom, Teams to do their lessons. This wasn't uncommon before. Online learning wasn't unheard of, but it will probably become more popular. The government could extend their apprenticeship initiatives, meaning there could be more businesses looking for apprentices. So before the pandemic, companies would pay into an apprenticeship levy, which meant that anyone who made over 3 million a year, so the business that made over 3 million a year, they would pay into an apprenticeship levy, and they would only get funds back if they took on an apprentice. So they were given financial incentives. During the pandemic and up to March 2021, this financial incentive has been increased. So now they gain, any company, if they take on apprentice, now gets £2,000 when it comes to taking on an apprentice. So there is that incentive. You know, companies have not stopped taking on apprentices. For instance, Amazon, they have just vowed to take on 1,000 new apprentices, as well as Bay Systems. They're taking on 1,200, I believe, apprentices as well. It's not something that's slowed down. Obviously, we're saying that more businesses will take on more than others, but apprenticeships, they are still being available. Obviously, there might be more online assessments rather than actually going into assessment centers, actually having job interviews. So before the pandemic, big companies, maybe like Google, would have assessment days. So that's how they would recruit apprentices. They would have multiple applicants come in at once and do a whole day of assessments. Now it might be the case that they do online testing, online job interviews. And as we touched on before, with any jobs at the moment, some industries are doing better than others. So things like tech, construction, and healthcare are thriving and they are taking on more apprentices, whereas things like hospitality and art, they may not be taking apprentices on at the moment, but do still encourage your kids to look for these type of apprenticeships, because though they might not be starting those apprenticeships now, they may be advertising for those apprenticeships to start later on in the year. So don't get dismayed if there's not anything up at the moment. It's just important to keep on searching and keep on doing that research. So yeah, that's just a little bit about apprenticeships during the pandemic. If we could go on to the next slide, and I believe, and Polly is going to tell you more about what AIM can offer you rather than just information about apprenticeships. So, and Polly, over to you.
Thanks, Abby. So I'm just going to quickly touch upon the Kickstart scheme now. This is just another thing to think about if you are sort of caring for a young person that's unsure of what to do upon sort of leaving school, or what other options are available to them as well. So the government Kickstart scheme was brought in to tackle the record high levels of youth unemployment that's been caused by COVID-19. So the scheme essentially allows employers to receive support from the government to allow them to open up more opportunities to local young people. So these opportunities are 6-month work placements, and roles can be in anything that they feel fit that is a good fit for the business. So you can be in the hospitality sector, they could be support roles in a law firm, they could be, the options are endless. What is the support that employers are given is that the government will pay 100% of the minimum wage for 25 hours per week for each young person they take on. If an employer says, actually, you know, this role is better suited to full time, they can top up the extra sort of 15 or so hours themselves. So these are work placements, so they're not necessarily full-time permanent roles. Now it's the employer's responsibility to show that actually, while they do have a young person within the organisation on the scheme, that they are supporting them in, one, helping them gain valuable skills that will be transferable to other roles, and two, actually providing an element of employability support as well. So actually preparing them for other roles in the sense of sort of looking at making sure their CV is up to scratch, preparing for interviews, and they can also offer any other training as well that they feel will be beneficial for young people. Just if the young person doesn't stay at the organisation that they're with already, they do have the option to, as I said, help them look for new roles, or they can actually take them on within the same organisation for a full-time permanent role. Now, in order to be eligible for this scheme, the young person must be aged 16 to 24 or in receipt of universal credit. So this means that they have to be attached to the job centre. So these vacancies aren't your typical vacancies that will be found on Indeed or through Reed. They are only advertised through job centres directly to service users that are in receipt of universal credit. Thanks, Hamish. If we could go to the next slide, please. So if anyone's interested and wants to learn more, so if you are based at an employer and might be interested, or if you are working or know or caring for a young person that you think this might be well suited to, you can get in touch with myself on the email address below there, which is just mpolly.zakala@theaimgroup.co.uk. Thanks, Hamish. So what else can we support you with at AIM? So this is more for yourselves, parents and caregivers. We work with colleges and training providers across the country to offer fully funded short courses that you can complete in your own time. So we offer over 60 free accredited courses. So when we say accredited, it means that they are certified and you will get a certificate at the end of them. They are all level 2 qualifications and they're designed to either upskill or you can study for anything that's a personal interest to yourself. So these courses are great because they are completed at home and in your own time. So there isn't any classroom learning per se. Once you have signed up, all of the course materials and learning materials are accessed online, and you will be given access to your own personal tutor that you can contact at any time, and you can use as much or as little of their support as you feel necessary. As I said, we have a range of courses in a number of different subject areas. So there are digital skills, business administration. Something that's really popular at the moment is mental health and well-being. COVID and lockdown has affected people in a range of different ways. So we're able to offer courses such as mental health awareness, understanding children and young people's mental health, to help support you to sort of notice signs in others or any of the people that you're caring for as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Polly, for running us through Kickstart and BIQs. So just again, thank you all so much for listening. And just on the screen now, you'll find the National Apprenticeship Service social media. So again, if you like to follow that, there's lots of information and resources available for you parents. And also you'll find lots of new things coming out this week, especially because it's National Apprenticeship Week. And there's also the National Career Service as well that has lots of information. So please do plenty of research and follow lots of different employers so you can find out all the latest information. So if we go on to the next slide, I'd like to ask sort of answer some of the questions that you have. So Hamish has he's put down all the links for you. You can find those in the chat. So please feel free to copy all those links. And if you, of course, want to get in touch with us, you can get in touch through the inquiries at theaimgroup.co.uk. And we're happy to help you further. What we'll do is we're going to answer some of these questions now. And what I wanted to say is that we also have another webinar coming up next week on the 17th. So we will send you some details for that. But if you'd like to join that one, it's all about mental health and how we can support with some of the courses that we have. So it's a really great webinar. And also, if you like any support for schools, again, me and Abby are always very happy to help. So please do email us at inquiries@theaimgroup.co.uk. So Abby, let's have a look at some of the questions, shall we?
Yeah, so I have a question here from Claire, who says, what is the difference between an internship and an apprenticeship? So this is a really interesting question, Claire. I would say that the main difference is that an internship doesn't guarantee payment. There's no payment guaranteed by the government. There's no minimum wage for an internship. Also, a internship doesn't offer a actual qualification. It is mainly just work experience. So remember, with an apprenticeship, you're getting that work experience, you're getting that qualification, you know, and it is guaranteed. That salary is guaranteed. An internship, like a placement, like work experience, is, you know, a great experience, but it isn't necessarily recognized as a qualification, and it can be a unpaid internship as well. So Fred, do you have anything to answer with that as well?
Yeah, no, that's you pretty much said it all there, Abby.
Yeah, no worries.
So we have a couple of questions about whether you can receive this recording. We are recording this. And if anybody would like to receive this recording to share with the other parents, then please do get in touch with us through the inquiry email, and then we can send that to you directly as well. So yes, feel free to get in touch with us and we can help you with that.
Yep. Natasha has also asked, do you have an email address so we can ask any specific questions? The email address is just on the slides now, so do note that down and give us a just give us a shout and we will help you any way we can. I have a specific question from Georgina, who asked, does the NHS have a central apprenticeship application system, or do we have to apply to individual hospitals? So actually, while Fred and Hamish were speaking, I had a look at the NHS website. So the NHS's information is available on the websites that we showed today, like the vacancy snapshot, so more information about the NHS there. But NHS also have a job website of their own, and their apprenticeships are listed on that website as well. So you don't have to apply to the individual hospitals. They will have all the different apprenticeship vacancies available via the different hospitals. So you would apply due to your location. So you just have that main website and all the information is available there. Fred, anything to add there?
Yes, so thank you, Abby. That's exactly what I was going to say. So if you go on to NHS careers, if you search that, it's kind of like the main central system where you can find most of them. However, I do find there's some big hospital, also you can find the local opportunities directly from your big hospital. So for example, I'm based in Cambridge, so Adam Brooks Hospital has amazing opportunities, and they actually have an open day for apprentices. So they may not advertise it on the big NHS website, so you may find that information specifically on the local hospitals. So worth searching both, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have, my son would like to work with the train company, but although some information on the internet, there is some information on the internet, is difficult to find when they are open for applications. Is there a website where you can find all apprenticeships in the area? So that's from Tina. So first of all, Tina, I would say it's worth looking at Find an Apprenticeship. Then it's also worth looking at Vacancy Snapshot. I believe they have some of the transport companies on there. Fred, am I right in thinking that?
Yes, you're right.
Yep. And they will list when you're able to apply there. It's important to remember that it is sometimes difficult finding apprenticeships because you have to do a little bit more looking. You have to look at the individual websites as well as find an apprenticeship. Again, it's not like UCAS where you have that one-stop shop. I did want to mention as well, I didn't mention earlier, that apprenticeships, you usually do have to apply to more than one. You know, it's recommended that they apply to several apprenticeships because, like we said before, they are competitive, and you will more than often not get the first apprenticeship that they apply for. Fred, anything to offer about this one?
Yeah, so I agree with you completely, Abby. Also, so we showed you the Find an Apprenticeship website, which is kind of like the starting point, but just bear in mind that some employers may have not started the recruitment process yet, so you may not find that information directly on their site. And as I've already mentioned, if you can't find it on their website through the career page, then definitely send them an email, get in touch with them directly, and they may be able to guide you where you need to go to find this particular apprenticeship. As we mentioned, everybody advertises their apprenticeships in different ways, so it's not as straightforward. And often what you need to do is think a little bit outside of the box. So just think about those big employers, but also look at the small ones and look, for example, the councils. Often they provide lots of different apprenticeships. So don't forget the public sector is a really good one as well. So just have a look. I know it's difficult when you first start looking, but just keep going and keep trying to find that information. If you can't, just send them an email. I'm sure they'll get back to you.
Yeah. Also, I will say as well, on the government website, you can set alerts for yourself. I don't know if we covered this.
Yes.
So if you were to put transport, if you were to put train and save that search, it would send you an email or text every time a listing like that came up. So it keeps you ahead of the game, really.
With the train company, there's the London Transport that is always looking for apprentices, and they take on a big cohort. Just so you know, if you look them up, so that's the London Transport, and you will actually, if you become an apprentice for them, I believe you get free train tickets as well, so you can commute. So even if you live a little bit further away from London, you can commute quite easily because you can have free access to trains. So we're looking at that one.
That's useful. Lisa says, how many people are currently employed through apprenticeships? Fred may have an answer to this, Lisa, but I will say that the government are trying to push apprenticeships a lot more. So if you look at the situation in Germany, what you'll find is that students, it's split half and half. So half the students go to university and half the students go into apprenticeships. And this is kind of the route that the UK are trying to take at the moment. As you can see, probably with lots of people struggling with, the AIM group just answered 750,000 people took an apprenticeship last year. So these are being pushed by the government mainly in response to the fact that people are struggling with university loans. Also, there is some dismay at the universities at the moment, the fact that they are not getting those live lectures and stuff. And the UK government is trying to push for more of a workforce. So apprenticeships are being pushed. That's why you have those government incentives as well. So apprenticeships they are becoming more popular, but new ones are coming out every year. More and more apprenticeships will be available. Fred, anything to add?
No, I think you said it all there, Abby.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
And then Nicole says, can someone who has a degree do another apprenticeship at the higher level? Fred, do you have an answer for this?
Well, if you have a degree, if you want to follow what you've studied in your degree and you want to do an apprenticeship, so say for example you have studied English but you also want to become a teacher, you can get your teaching qualifications through an apprenticeship. So those are technically different qualifications, not quite a degree because you already have a degree, but it's a higher level because it's a teaching qualification. As well as that, for example, if you want to become an architect, you will need a degree in order to then get your masters, and you can get those masters through an apprenticeship. Of course, if you have a degree and you want to do something completely different from what you've studied, something completely new, then you may have to start from a lower level. So you may have to start from a foundation degree and working your way up to a degree. I hope that helped. I don't know, Abby, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, that's the basic principle. If you cannot do a degree or you cannot do an apprenticeship at the same level in the same subject, you can do an apprenticeship after a degree if it's a higher level. You can do a degree after apprenticeship if it's a higher level in that as well in the same subject. But if you are doing a completely different subject, you can do a degree and an apprenticeship. So it's no problem there. We also have some questions in the chat. So there was one at the very beginning. My son has applied to apprenticeships last week. How long would it take for the employer to get into touch? So this is essentially the same as when you're applying to a job. So they probably won't be likely to get in touch until all the applications are in. So when the applications are closed. And I would say generally, the bigger the employer, it may take longer. More local companies, they'll get back to you quicker. Obviously, at the moment, they will be receiving more applications than most. So I think the important thing is to be patient and to just keep applying to as many as possible. Fred, any more to add?
No, that's exactly it. So when you apply for an apprenticeship, just like a real job, you have to wait to the closing date and then give yourself about a couple of weeks. I mean, of course, if you don't hear anything in a couple of weeks, then maybe worth chasing them. So again, you can send them an email, just say that you have applied and you're waiting for some information, and I'm sure they'll get back to you. But generally speaking, they tend to come back and let sort of students know within 2 weeks of the closing date.
Also, encourage your kids to ask for feedback after interviews, especially if they don't get the position.
Yes.
No one's born being good at interviews. I always say practice makes perfect. You need to get that feedback. A lot more people asking for the recording. So I believe information will be sent out about the recording. Do we need a CV for apprenticeship applications? Yes is the answer, because first and foremost it is a job, but most companies will have an online application system where you input all the sort of same information you would put in the CV. And then if yes, who can help write the best version up to date? AIM are able to help with this, aren't they, Fred?
Yes, so we have a CV sort of developer you can use through our website, which is really good. You can fill out all, so it gives you a bit of questions, you fill them all in and it comes up with a nice looking CV. But there's also other websites such as the National Career Service as well. They can help answer any questions that you have for your CV or for interviews as well. But of course, we are here to support. So if anybody sort of needs that a little bit of support, then feel free to get in touch.
Yeah. Casey also asked, is there apprenticeships for animal care? Casey, there are so many apprenticeships for animal care because obviously, an important part with apprenticeships is that practical element. And obviously, if you're working with animals, that is an important aspect. You can become a veterinary assistant, you can become a horse groom, a dog groom, training, working in zoos, all through apprenticeships. There are so many available. So it is definitely worth looking into that. I would say a good website to look up as well is the National Career Service. It lists all the sort of jobs that are available and whether you can do that doing an apprenticeship. So worth having a look there. Fred, anything to add?
No, I think you've said it all there, Abby.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the questions we have for now. If anyone has any more, please let us know. But otherwise, if there are none and you think of one later, please email us.
Yes, email us at any time. We're more than happy to help. And if anybody's looking for the recording, do please get in touch and we can send that through to you. But apart from that, thank you all for coming and for your time and watching us tonight. I hope it was useful. And I wish you all a lovely evening and a lovely rest of National Apprenticeship Week.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been great. And thank you for all the wonderful questions.
Thank you.
Yep.